It's 2 p.m. Good afternoon and welcome to today's episode of Market View. Today we have a guest from the Eswatini Competition Commission. The commission has partnered with the Ombudsman of Financial Services in an outreach program aimed at empowering consumers with information at community level. The two organizations, joined by other partners including the Central Bank of Eswatini and the Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority, ESERA, have already visited some Tinkhundla centers in the month of June. According to the Advocacy and Communications Manager at the Eswatini Competition Commission, Manqoba Mabuza, this program aims at imparting knowledge to consumers about their rights enshrined in the law, including the Fair Trading Act of 2001 and the Competition Act of 2007. He'll join us in studio today to tell us why it's important for consumers to know their rights. Then later, Sanel Sbia joins us via Zoom for a look at today's markets. And interesting news, exciting news for Sapumula Savings and Credit Cooperatives. Stay tuned. Something big has just come to light that could affect you. We'll have the details coming up shortly. But for now, let's go straight to our first story. A shocking audit report has uncovered that 1.5 million emalangeni was allegedly misappropriated by some staff members at Sapumula Savings and Credit Cooperative between 2021 and 2024. The revelations have forced the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade to order a full-scale forensic audit. This was confirmed by Musa Gumetse, the Assistant Commissioner of Cooperatives Development.
The Assistant Commissioner of Cooperatives Development says they have received a report from Sapumula Savings and Credit Cooperative, and it has revealed that over 1.5 million emalangeni has been misappropriated. He says some deposits were made to staff members at times without following proper channels. He further clarifies that the audit was conducted on staff members and was not a fully blown forensic audit.
Sutholile umbiko suthola ngelikomiti layo inhlangano yasaphumula ukuthi kukhona lokungahambi kahle empeleni bese kuvele kukhona lebe sike sakuva then sasesiba nawo umhlangano lala sihlangana nalo likomiti basethulela ireport yembiko lebe bawendile kuzama kubuka kusebenta kwenhlangano kube umbiko wesikhashana lesincane ngetulu kwaloba ngumbiko wesikhashana lesincane ngumbiko lobe ubuka ikakhulu tintfo lebeti sithi tisetshentwe tisebenzi takasaphumula kuphela wangatsinzi mhlawumbe tintfo leyo khanza kustifaka ekhathi labo lebe basebhodini mhlawumbe kulomnyaka losetulu naseminyakeni lesemuva lile mhlawumbe singayibekisa ukuthi ingetulu kwa 1.5 million ngekusho kwalombiko lesiniketwe wona lobe kwenteka lokukhulu lesikubonile ngilowe ukuthi bekungalandzelwa mhlawumbe ema policies lakhona bokhanza ukuthi imali tiyaphuma ngekusho kwale report ivetale ukuthi letinye betiphuma mhlawumbe tingasayinelwa ngilabo lekufanele batisayinele noma letinye betiphuma ngendlela lethi mhlawumbe kufike umuntu uthite wathi imali ayisuke kulihlobo lolithite lema savings iye kulolunye lihlobo kanzi le policy ukhanje ukuthi intwe leto lebe ingativumeli.
We asked him on what efforts the ministry is making to monitor the cooperatives as misuse of public funds has now become a norm in these organizations. He says they always monitor the operations of the cooperatives. However, due to a shortage of staff, it is challenging at times. He says
etinkundleni njengoba tikhona live lingaka basebenta kanjani kuhlola nalokuthi vele basalandzela wona yini umthetho isikhathi lesinengi bekuyaye kube ukuthi kuleti inkulu nangabe kukhona lo sivile lothi akhambi kahle noma kukhona lesikubonako ukuthi ungathi akwendeki kahle sitawati usinyalo lokunye sokukhanza nje ku social media noma ngabe mhlawumbe bangakakubiki ibona bese ke siyasonzela siyawuhlola.
In a telephonic conversation, the chairperson of the board at Sapumula Savings and Credit Cooperative, Sheila Dlamini, said the 5 employees responsible for the alleged misappropriation have since been suspended. Some are alleged to have not followed proper channels, and loans with staff members were closed off without showing the products they were consolidated to. Some employees closed loans over 80,000 emalangeni. There were also loans that were being consolidated into others without showing the source loan account. At the time of compiling this report, we were still awaiting a response from the Financial Services Regulatory Authority. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, Fuminkosi Nzinisa and Derek Msibi, Mbabane.
And in international news, India and China are locked in a high-stakes struggle for influence in the Indian Ocean. Control over tiny islands could choke global trade and reshape regional power. How China is beating India in its own backyard.
If you open a map that tracks ships, zoom in on the Indian Ocean, then turn on live tracking, the vital arteries of global commerce become obvious.
Without access to it, trade between Europe, the Middle East, Africa and Asia would basically grind to a halt.
These are the choke points, the critical passages that fuel the world economy. For India, they're non-negotiable, carrying almost all its trade and energy.
Since the Indian Ocean is named after India, it is quite integral to India's worldview.
But it's also important to another giant. China is pouring billions into ports, infrastructure and naval expansion. And that has India alarmed.
China is
Another island Mauritius has sovereignty over has proved strategic for US and UK military power, with a base there since the 1970s. 4 of the world's 6 most important maritime choke points are in the Indian Ocean, making it absolutely critical to global trade.
India relies on the ocean for something like 95% of its international trade.
have a so-called sphere of influence. That kind of mentality should be gone. This is 21st century.
As China pushes in, the power that has dominated the Indian Ocean for decades is in retreat. While the US still controls more military across at least 80 countries, President Trump's foreign policy has meant scaling back on global.
The future holds in the Indian Ocean region is continued competition between India and China for influence. I think China will continue to press forward. It will continue to invest economically, politically, militarily in the countries surrounding India.
What India tries to bring is really an alternative model which is not extractive, which is not exploitative, where you can build a mutually beneficial relationship. If that US does really downsize its
00 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406 7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. You're still tuned into Market View. Thank you to discuss this further. Is Eswatini Competition Commission's advocacy and
launched by the Honorable Ministers for Commerce, Industry and Trade and the Honorable Minister for Tingulda Administration and Development early last year, 2020, in addition to looking at promoting the fair competition in the marketplace in Eswatini, and also preventing anti-competitive business practices. So we have got this aspect of consumer welfare. So this program is part of that. So other than just receiving complaints and investigating unfair business practices, we also reach out to consumers with knowledge like Ndondozi, Pix, Enkhaba, Vuvulane, Sandleni, Mtambama, Nhlambeni, amongst others. So yeah, it's quite exciting. People on the ground are discussing. We are bringing on board as well other regulators, like the Central Bank of Eswatini and the Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority, because you will understand that much as we regulate the entire economy as a competition commission and look at consumer welfare issues across different sectors, but there are other sector-specific regulators that are looking at consumer issues around their in their specific industries, like the Central Bank, Energy Regulator, and others. So that is why we're bringing them on board to say they also have consumer issues as part of their mandate, although it's within the confines of a sector. But we bring them on board. So we have been with them, and communities are happy to see all the regulators coming together. So it's a one-stop shop to accessing information about consumer protection issues.
Yeah. So as you highlighted, Mr. Mbuza, that you have been having discussions with community members about consumer rights. What are consumer rights? You know, we may have instances where
also the Competition Act of 2007, which I think there's another one, the Consumer Credit Act. So basically, within the law, there are rights of consumers. For instance, consumers have the right to access to have goods that are not defective, goods that are not harmful to their safety or health. And that is why sometimes you will find that in partnership with the municipality, and then only to find that it does not work. So that is deceptive. That is, you are misrepresenting the product. So if the consumer has got nowhere to go, then we came in as competition authority, empowered by the law. So government said, no, look, go and look into this issue. So we're addressing that. Consumers, time and again, they come to our offices, they call, we investigate those issues, and then we mediate between traders and consumers, because sometimes you'll find that they would say tatile, once the product is out of the shop, you cannot come back. And then that is within their rights as consumers to come back and say it's not working. And then they are supposed to be refunded and compensated in one way or the other. So we mediate in such issue. So amongst the many rights that are there for consumers, for instance, you will know that there are issues of loan conditions and financial fraud within in the financial sector, which is why the Central Bank of Eswatini comes with us. The Ombudsman of Financial Services is also coming on board, because there are those sector-specific issues. But amongst other things, those are the rights of consumers that are in the law.
Right. Just before I let you go, in the interest of time, your mandate as a commission is to, of course, investigate cases that come through, you know, that have to do with competition. Would you say there's fair competition in the economy of Eswatini?
Yes, I think based on what prevails on the ground now, we are partnering with business and other players, consumer forum, law society, government departments, other regulators, to reach out, I think, gradually. As you will know, Swazis are very receptive and welcoming when it comes to new legislation, new ideas on board, and we are receiving a huge huge support in terms of businesses understanding. I would say we are doing quite relatively well when it comes to leveling the playing field in the marketplace, and to ensure that businesses compete fairly. I think we are getting there. Of course, there's a lot of stakeholder engagement that takes place, because that's why we are reaching out to communities. We're engaging business lawyers, consumer forums and others, legislators, policymakers, because we need to keep on engaging until we find each other. And our contribution to the economy as well. That's the most important aspect of it, that we are not just regulating for the sake of it. We can see now in practical terms why the Competition Commission is important, because as we level the playing field, we are now encouraging innovation and growth in the economy, because businesses will want to innovate so that they grow their businesses. Whereas they do so, they're looking for new expertise, they're employing more people. So our value in terms of our our operations within the economy is there now, is visible, and in line with, because we also contribute to national development goal. That is why the competition regulator is there.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mabuza. Well, there you have it. Eswatini Competition Commission is on an outreach program with its partners, stakeholders, which include the Ombudsman of Financial Services, the Central Bank, and the FSRA, to educate consumers on their rights. After the break, we connect with Sunny Lesbia for today's markets.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Get ready, Eswatini. The Battle of Brains is back on your screens. The Maban Municipality Council Spelling Bee is back live on Eswatini television.
Please spell the word fairness.
Fairness. Fairness.
Witness the spelling mastery, creativity, and determination of our youth as they compete for the top prize.
Please spell the word rebellious.
Rebellious. REBELLIOUS.
Don't miss it. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. starting this July on Eswatini TV.
Welcome back. It's 25 minutes after 2. This is the final segment of today's episode. We get into today's market analysis with Sanile Spia. Mr. Sanile, very good afternoon and welcome to Market View. We have only 5 minutes, so let's just quickly go. Let's quickly take a look at today's markets, starting with US, of course.
All right, thank you, Lungelele. So when we're starting in the US, we can see that we closed the markets, on that winning streak yesterday with a bit of some positives coming through from that Dow Jones Industrial Average getting some 275 points, the Nasdaq gaining some 96 points, and the S&P 500 gaining 31 points. So what we are looking into that's moving the US markets, Lungelele, is movements towards that that big, beautiful bill as President Trump would have it. And also what we're looking into is, those trade talks with July 9 just start coming up next week. And we've had, talks around issues to do with some headaches or some issues with the trade talks between Japan and the US. And we also learning that there's potentially a deal coming through between the US and India. But when we move across to Europe, you will see that because there is no deal on the table promising for the European Union, or we're not even hearing any signs of something about to come out, is the fact that you can see that the European markets are somehow taking a negative insight. Also, building on that, Lungelele, is the fact that we are waiting to see what's going to happen to the US economy. We're waiting to see if that big, beautiful bill is going to get passed. But if it does get passed, Lungelele, it does bring to light the issue that the US might potentially be adding some 3 trillion to its stock of debt. So markets are a bit wary around that, Lungelele, but most pressing right now is that issue to do with those trade talks. When you move into Asia, again, you can see Japan and Hong Kong taking a bit of a hit, purely because there are those issues of the stalling talks between Japan and the US in relation to the trade deal. And then there's also the issue of how Japan is going to manage its monetary policy going forward, with them coming back into that positive interest rate territory, and coming back at such a time when there's such a lot of uncertainty boggling through the markets. In South Africa, South African Stock Exchange, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, is benefiting on the backdrop of those appreciating metals, and also the bit of that stability within the government of national unity, that fragile stability, but the fact that it's holding bodes well for markets. In the domestic stock exchange, we've not seen any changes. And then when you look into commodities, Lungelele, you will see that as we edge closer to July 9, we're seeing that shift again back into the metals, with gold just gaining some $100 just overnight. Remember, when we closed yesterday, it was at 2,950 something, but now it seems to have gained yet another 100 points to $100 to that, gaining some 1.54 points, signaling that there is a lot of that instability in markets, and markets somehow trying to adjust to that. But with the price of Brent crude, we seem to be stabilizing around that $66 per barrel, and we should expect a bit of a road back to those 64, 63 type of levels once we get a bit more clarity and a bit more stability out coming through from that ceasefire between Iran and Israel. And then in terms of the currencies, the Langen has actually gotten stronger today against all major currencies, gaining some 0.73 percentage points against the dollar, and gaining some 0.48 percentage points against the euro, and gaining some 0.04 percentage points against the Japanese yen. So that's being bolstered by the appreciating metals, which bolsters the South African economy, and therefore by extension bolsters the rand. And then there's also the issues to do with investors looking for emerging currencies, and if you can see, the euro as well has appreciated against the dollar, which shows there is a bit of a realignment of forex holdings across the globe. Thank you, Lungelele.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spear, for that analysis. We've come to the end of our program today. This was the final segment of today's episode of Market View. Do join us again for
record for June. At least 74 more people killed in Gaza Monday.